welcome to Doing Tech Bits. So, do you want to start by just introducing yourself? Tell us a bit about what you do and just, a bit of background about yourself.
Okay, cool. So, hi everyone, I'm Shantelle, and I guess we start at the beginning.
What is the beginning?
We'll start at like the professional beginning.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I studied at the University of Manchester.
Okay.
And I studied material science and engineering. And I did my master's in corrosion science. And at this point, I'm going to say something, and it's not a brag, but I did graduate top of my class. I want to say it because this doesn't always, it doesn't happen overnight. Like, you do have to keep working, and I just want to illustrate that. And then after uni, I went to work at a consultancy. As like a graduate engineer, I was a structural integrity specialist. And then, the pandemic happened.
Yeah, I remember that.
It did its thing, and I just decided I didn't want to be an engineer anymore. I'm a very people-orientated person. And I wanted to do something that was building something new, I think. Because I think anyone that's an engineer knows you're working on principles that came about a few hundred years ago. Nothing has really changed. And I was like, I want to do something that's new. And I decided that I was going to get into tech. I didn't know anything about tech. I was listening to rooms on Clubhouse.
Wow.
That's how I got onboarded into the whole general tech space.
This is interesting because my next question was going to be your tech origin story. Mm-hmm. Are you telling us for a fact that the first, the spur for you to get into tech was Clubhouse?
It was Clubhouse.
Wow. Okay, so that's the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Clubhouse. How did that happen? How was that journey for you? So basically, tell us your tech origin story, right? You've told us the first time you got the inclination to get into tech. Then what did you do from there?
So I was on Clubhouse. There was nothing to do. We couldn't go out. We were inside.
This is sad times. Very, very tough times. Honestly.
But we made it.
We all did. Yeah.
We made it. So I remember I was listening to these rooms, and I was listening to a few different things. The Lion King auditions. I was listening to people doing these strange dating rooms, and then also the tech ones.
Okay.
And I remember learning about UX. I didn't know what UX was. I didn't know what user-centered design was. I knew nothing about human-computer interactions, any of it.
Right.
But one thing about me is deep down, I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, and I like just learning about things, and I like kind of getting ahead of the curve. So I remember just listening to people getting on stage and talking about their jobs, non-technical jobs, because I did learn how to code when I was at uni. I learned Python for data analysis, not very well.
I mean, you started with a little bit, so that gave you a sense of what coding was.
Yeah. But the application was always in engineering. It was never in technology or building applications. It was never anything like that.
Okay.
So I remember just listening to people talk and being like, I want to know more about this. And one thing about me is I don't really sit still for that long. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go do a course. So I remember I started off doing a UX design course on Udemy, self-paced. I was like, I want to understand principles. I want to understand why we're building things like this. From there, I was like, okay, but why are we making these decisions? And I was like, I need to find out why we're doing this. I decided to enroll myself on a UX research course on Coursera to learn about, let's learn about design principles, actually. Let's learn about how we collect information from people and how we make data-driven decisions. And at some point, I sat down and I was like, I like design, but I'm not really a designer. And I like the research, but I don't really want to be a researcher. I'm going to be a product manager. And
okay, wait, let's just take a step back, right? So you did courses on design and UX, user interaction and all that stuff. And you did some research, the research side of it as well.
Yeah.
And you somehow landed on product, which is not somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
It's kind of somewhere left.
A little bit.
What you've been, a little bit left. So Was that something else that sort of made you look at product and sort of go, do you know what, that perhaps suits you more?
Yeah.
Was it your skills? Was it something else?
For sure, like it was my skills. So I'd been working at a consultancy for 2 years. Like I know how to like manage teams, manage budget. I know how to do all of that stuff.
Okay.
But the thing that I was really drawn to about the tech space for me was like UX and like user experience. It's like, how do we create products that people need and actually will use? And for me, product management is the field at the intersection of UX, technology, and business. It encompasses so much.
Yes.
And I'm somebody that likes to be busy. So I was like, this sounds great.
Okay.
I'm going to do it.
Tell us what the major challenges were that you faced in transitioning from sort of, having a degree, first of all, in material science engineering, working as a structural integrity engineer, and then product manager. Like, that is actually some interesting jumps there. So what were those major challenges that you faced while going through that transition phase?
I would say for me, it wasn't in finding the role.
Okay.
I was very fortunate that I actually found the role pretty quickly, like after I started applying. For me, it's holding yourself back. So a lot of the time, I feel like when you're switching careers, you think that your experience isn't valid. You don't think it's very like relevant, but it is.
I hear that a lot from people I speak to. Yeah.
It's like the diversity of your perspective, and like you have in whatever you've been doing before you get into tech, like you have learned so much. You've probably mastered your craft, and like you have skills, and you can apply those skills in a different way.
Yes.
You look at yourself and you're like, oh, but I've never done this before. I was joining a company to become an associate product manager in fintech. I'd never worked in fintech, and I'd never worked in tech, and I was like, I like don't think I can do it. Like I don't know, and I'm talking myself out of it. But once I got there, I realized, oh, this is exactly the same as what I was doing. It's just a different context.
That is quite interesting perspective. And it's interesting because I find myself talking to a lot of people that are trying to transition into tech. And one thing I find common is they think that the skills they have are not transferable. And when you actually break it down, like things like even just networking, problem solving, communication, like those are very valid skills that as a product manager, for example, they're very important. So it's good to hear that, your perspective on that as well, because a lot of people don't know that these are things that are transferable. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think something else that we can add in is a product manager has to be a good storyteller, and that's not necessarily something you'd have done in your prior job, or like actually thought thoughts that you would have done in your prior job. But as long as you can communicate clearly and you can work logically, I think it works out for you.
I know for a fact that you are very, very good at networking. Yes. So tell us how that skill, right, helped you to transition into tech, but also if there were like mentors or friends that helped you in that transition, not necessarily like helping you get a job or land a job, just like in any way they offered you support and helped make that transition easier, better for you.
I would say that I have a great village. I'm surrounded by people that are very good at what they do, but also are very good at reassuring and sending me like opportunities. So when I was trying to transition, they sent me a lot of resources like, oh, you said you wanted to move into product. I saw this thing about product. Because, sometimes is it confirmation bias where you hear of something and then you see it everywhere?
Oh, yeah.
So I had very resourceful friends in that sense. And I also was a part of Black Valley at the time. So Black Valley is an organization that's been set up to help more Black people in the UK get into tech. And at the time, they had a career accelerator program, but they don't run that at this current time anymore. So I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was an experienced product manager who was able to kind of take me through the principles of product management and also make me think about what type of product manager I wanted to be. I think it was like really, really useful. I think being able to advocate for yourself is a skill in itself. And it helps so much when you're transitioning. Sometimes you look up events that you want to go to because you know that there's going to be people there in the field that you want to get into. And just being able to say, hi, I don't know anything, but I want to learn, it changes everything.
It does, indeed, it does change everything. Like personally, I've been networking a lot more. And networking with sort of the aim of building a community that are interested in things I'm interested in. Because I'm interested in tech transitioning.
Yeah.
But then I realized that I knew very few people who were in that space. And I just put myself out there, start going to events. And it's the same thing when you want to get into tech, right? Like your tech job can actually come from going to a networking event, some DevOps event in Manchester. And trust me, there are loads of events in every city that there is. You just have to look for them and you find them. You go there, meet people that are already in that space and talk to them.
Yeah.
You don't have to, already have experience, right? Like you can tell them, literally, I've got zero experience, but I care about this thing. I want to be, in this industry, and people will offer you support and help, right? So yeah, networking I think is very, very important. And it's good to see that you had a mentor as well, because I think mentors are very important because, with a mentor, sort of, they can cover your blind side.
Exactly.
I think that's one big thing about mentors that I've taken away. So that's very interesting to hear. Well, now we've talked about your transitioning into tech, your journey from university to being an engineer and now working in tech. Can you tell us what your day-to-day is like now? And if that has changed over the time, I think, a year and a half that you've been working in tech, tell us how that's changed.
Yes, it's changed a lot.
Okay.
So, I was working in fintech as an associate product manager, and now I'm an ecosystem builder for a blockchain protocol. And I know that sounds like a lot of jargon, but I'm going to try my best to break it down. So when I left my product job after just under a year, and I started working for this blockchain protocol. And as an ecosystem builder, it sounds very general, and that's because it is. I'm a generalist, as you can tell by my journey, just how I've been traveling through the world. And I started off doing a lot of business development. And then I touched on a little bit of product management. Okay. But what I found about product managers in Web3 is that they are very technical, because Web3 and building these decentralized applications requires a very high degree of technical ability. Okay. So to be a great product manager, you have to be technical. And I don't code. Well, I'm learning to code. I'm learning JavaScript right now, but I don't code. So I was like, this is not for me right now. So I went back into business development. But when you're working for a startup, whether it's a Web3 startup or Web2 startup, you wear many hats. Mm-hmm. And so right now I'm kind of in a more comms and marketing role. I generate content for this blockchain.
Amazing. That's very interesting. So you somehow found something that suited you in terms of your skills, where you can add the most value, but also something you were interested in, right? Was it actually easy doing that? Because I'm just deep in that you've not only transitioned from a different field into tech, within tech, you've also transitioned within tech. How was that sort of moving from PM role to now ecosystem builder? That's such an amazing role, by the way. I've never heard of it before. But yeah, tell us what that was like. Was it similar to getting into tech? Was it easier?
I would say it was easier because I was already in tech.
Yes.
And I didn't feel like I didn't belong in Web3 because it is just tech, but with, blockchains. And the way that it happened for me was I was a few months into my product management role, and one of my friends from the Black Valley Career Accelerator program had just become a blockchain engineer.
Okay.
He called me and he was like, you need to buy this NFT. So then I was like, okay, I bought crypto in 2017. let's
We both did.
I was like, let's give NFTs a go. He onboarded me over the phone. I remember I was on the phone with him for like an hour, and he was like, this is how you add the network to your wallet. This is how
Literally step by step.
Step by step.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. And I'm like, this is really cool. I've never seen anything like this before. So I go down the rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, what are tokens? What are blockchains? What does this all mean? What are DAOs? What's DeFi? And I'm talking in the space of like 2 weeks. I had applied for a scholarship to go to a conference, a Web3 conference in Denver. And I found out maybe like 3 days after my application that I was successful. So they sent me some money in crypto and were like, book your flights. You're going to be part of this hackathon. And you're gonna come here. You're going to learn about blockchain, like with industry leaders, with experts. And I'm like, I don't know anyone, but let's go. Why not? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? But it really was a really great start to my journey. And from there, like from that hackathon, I met my current boss.
Oh, very, very interesting. So I think one thing that stands out from what you just said, and I want people to really pay attention to this, is the fact that, you didn't like go online and like spend hours looking for this role. You were interested in something, did some research, you fell into this rabbit hole, applied for this conference. It just sort of happened organically, but you just following that path, just digging deeper and going deeper down the rabbit hole. So that's to say that like there isn't just one way to get a job. It's not just sort of applying for 500 job roles online, and that can be very tiring, trust me. So yeah, it's good to see that, you had this amazing, interesting path, and how this guy ended up being your boss is just amazing.
It was networking that got me my current job.
See, I'm going to say this now, and I've said this before in the first episode. Networking is a superpower. Enough said.
It is, for real.
Can you tell us, right, some of the skills that you developed working as a structural integrity engineer that have been transferable to your current role, and how you've applied them? But also just like you can talk a bit more generally about skills that you've learned in life, that you've been able to tap into and have made you excel, in this, your current role in tech.
Yeah, I think when I was an engineer, I worked for a consultancy. Mm-hmm. And that meant, I worked in a team. I had to be very organized. I needed amazing time management. I also needed to know how to communicate with stakeholders. That's something that I had to carry on through when I was a product manager. And it's something I do every single day as an ecosystem builder. I think there are so many foundational skills that are transferable and that you can really lean on into. It doesn't matter where you started your career. As long as you can communicate with people, you can use that. If you know how to organize yourself, you can use that. I think I'm very happy to lean on my soft skills. And that's probably how I ended up doing like marketing and comms, even though I'm an engineer, because it comes naturally to me. And I think sometimes you can lean on the things that you're comfortable in while you're learning the new skills. Like I said, I'm learning to code right now.
Yeah.
Because, I want to step back into my product management bag in Web3, but I want to be great at it.
So good is not enough for you.
I want to be great.
Great is what you strive for.
Excellence only.
Amazing. We love to hear that. So now we've seen this journey of yours, right? From uni to engineering to tech, and even within tech, you've sort of moved from PM to this amazing role that I can't stop just saying the title right, ecosystem builder. Amazing. Now, in all of this, right, have your career goals changed, right? So I imagine when you were an engineer, you had career goals you wanted to achieve. Are they different now? And if they are different, how have they changed? What are they now?
When I was an engineer,
Yeah,
I just wanted to be an engineer. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to get my graduate job. I'm going to work my 5 years. I'm going to get my chartership. I'm going to keep working in energy because I'm very interested in green energy. And at the time I worked in nuclear engineering. So I was like, I want to, you know, help save the world from, you know, the big bad oil companies. And that was my plan. My plan was to just be an engineer. Then moving into tech and seeing like the way things change so quickly and how quickly people innovate inspired me to start my own thing. I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a founder. And this was kind of boosted for me because I went to these hackathons. So I would go to these Web3 hackathons, I would form a team, and my team would win. They would win like these hackathons and we would win prizes, and people wanted to invest in us. And that attracted the attention of Europe's best like startup accelerator. It's called Entrepreneur First. And I was encouraged to apply for the program as they were doing their first Web3 cohort. Yeah. And I did the cohorts, and I learned so much about, you know, how to be a founder. You fail fast.
Yes.
You don't really sit still. You keep testing your ideas. You keep like throwing things at them and seeing if they break. And if they break, you pivot. And I learned so much about myself, and I was very fortunate to be surrounded by so many like exceptional and very impressive people that were like delusional enough to want to actually be founders, right? Because it's not glamorous. Like,
no, it's not.
You work a lot, and a lot of the time there is not that much upside, but they're so committed to solving problems within whatever vertical that they were like operating in. So we had edtech, we had medtech, we had Web3, we had space people. And it was just so inspiring. And I said, do you know what? Life is too short for me not to try.
Oof. Life is too short for me not to try. Someone needs to write that one down because, yeah, that might be the title of this podcast. Life is too short for me not to try. Amazing. This is the final segment, and this is, you know, the fun bit.
Okay.
And you can relax now. No one's going to be drilling you about tech transitioning and all that stuff. So my first question to you, and I like to ask this question all the time with a different flavor, right? So live, work, and visit. London, New York, Monaco. Where would you live? Where would you work? And where would you choose to visit?
Oh, live, work, visit.
Don't take too long. It's meant to be under fire. Quick.
Okay. I would live in London.
Obviously.
I would work in New York and visit Monaco.
To be fair, I've probably chosen the same thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
New York is a crazy place.
Yeah, New York. I mean, I've not been to New York, but yeah, I've heard things.
Yeah.
I've seen things. So yeah. If you had to pick between being an influencer and a CEO, or let me change that, between being a super influencer and being a CEO, what would you pick?
Why choose one when you can be both?
No, we're not doing that. We're not having that.
Okay, I think ultimately I would want to be a super influencer because I feel like you have you're charismatic and you're able to tell your story and get people to buy in. And I think that's people that are like influencers create the most change.
Interesting, you're kind of like your CEO as an influencer, a CEO of your brand. But yeah, I do agree with you. And as an influencer, you can influence anything, really.
Exactly.
But yeah, interesting perspective there. And my final question to you is simply any last words for the audience, the people listening to you today?
I would say thank you for tuning in to Little Old Me.
Yes, thank you.
But I would also say that one thing that we have to do is get rid of imposter syndrome. And I think you hear it a lot, but you really do have to believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, get your friends to tell you how great you are so you can start believing in yourself. But also, if you have any questions about Web3 or hackathons or scholarships to hackathons, please do just send me a message. I'm sure that my info will be in the description.
It will be.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks. It's been amazing having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Doing Tech Bits. Please leave a like, comment, DM, anything. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.